Good morning, you guys. So, I made a video yesterday about how modern marriage is fraught with difficulties because we're expecting now one person to fulfill us emotionally in our hearts, to give us security and love and everything. And that throughout human history was never something that marriage was for. Marriage was for survival, for security. Even the richest people that could choose whoever they wanted to marry, the monarchs, they would marry other monarchs, right, to combine land and property. And people got married to have children or just for survival. It took a lot of work to survive. I think we forget that because it's so easy today. Today we survive by working and earning money so we can buy things. Like, we have really separate out our roles, not by gender or in a community, but more like by, within a society. Anyway, I think that, so it started in the Victorian age that people started with this idea of falling in love, romantic love. This is a very new idea throughout human history. And I think that some of the, evolutionary psychologists, when they talk about mating, maybe we kind of go off on the wrong tangent when we associate all this with pair bonding, this idea, people came up with the twin flame or this other that will complete us. And I think it's just a search for meaning, actually. It does seem to me, but I want to know what you think. I have seen couples that do seem like they have a genuine connection that lasts over many decades. There are couples who do enjoy being together over many decades. And what do these couples have in common? It's just like me observing on my sofa. It seems like there's a strong physical attraction that keeps a person, even that's unhappy in that relationship due to their strong physical attraction to the other person, or due to like some kind of like needing financial security or having some kind of a religious belief, that they're willing to overlook their own emotional pain in that relationship because of that very strong attraction, maybe because they have children together. But I think it's mainly the attraction. They're willing to overlook the pain that they have in the relationship because the attraction, the sexual attraction or physical attraction, is so strong. And this physical attraction can last many decades, I found. So there are people that enjoy being married because they like the security. They have that strong physical attraction, but most of all, okay, so strong physical attraction is one. The other one is they're very easygoing. One or both of the partners in that relationship is extremely easygoing. They're willing to not really care that much about some things that may seem very important, like where do we live? How do we raise our children? How do we spend our money? They're either very aligned in these things or they're very easygoing. Things just roll off their shoulders. Some people are like that. They're just very easygoing. And these people are very easy to get along with. And you have two easygoing people, they can really get along very well. Or if you have at least one easygoing person. The other kind of marriage I think lasts a long time is if people get, so that would be like a marriage for companionship. Like, we really enjoy each other, or we have a really good friendship. I really enjoy this person. Maybe I'm blending things here. The other one is when people get married because they have a certain foundation or glue that binds them together. It could be, we want to have a family. And their desire to stay in a family and not break up that family through divorce is very strong. Either because they really value family life, or it's a religious thing, or it's something about they think it's better for their children, like some deep inner conviction. And again, it helps if there's some attraction, some respect for the other person, Somebody's easygoing, but sometimes, like in my case, once the kids were grown, that wasn't able to sustain. I think other glues that hold people together are if both people have the same profession and they have something in common. They're both therapists. Okay, I've seen different couples on YouTube. They're both therapists. They're both journalists. They're both politicians. And so they have this common bond that keeps them together for their intellectual stimulation, or some common, or they're in business together. But I think unless you have this glue, unless you need some kind of a glue to make people want to sustain this pair bond, and because living with another person is very difficult. Some people are very easy to live with, but you see each other's flaws, you have to deal with disagreements. So I think if you have this underlying glue, whether it's attraction or like having a family together or business together, or some deep friendship or with that person. And I think unless you have that, I don't think it's easy to stay together. It's easier to just not stay together. And I think there are fewer couples that can actually manage to have this kind of a bond that makes them want to stay in this relationship for decades, or meet somebody that they even want to do that with. That's what it seems like to me. It seems like the majority of people are in relationships that they're not happy in, but they're afraid to get out. They're emotionally afraid or financially afraid, or they feel kind of trapped. But I think there are some people who genuinely like being in a relationship or like being married. And when you're married, it's more of a commitment. That's where a lot of people don't want to get married. They don't want to make that commitment. And they no longer feel like that's something they have to do. It's more like something that they want to do. But in order to have a successful long-term marriage with one person, I really think it helps to have somebody with which there is some common shared mission in life or goal that goes beyond, we're in love and everything will work out, or people who are actually very easygoing. I think we've just been sold, this sort of lie about being in love. I think historically some people were in love, but mostly people got married for survival. They didn't expect to have any emotional fulfillment from that other person. They didn't expect to have mind-blowing sex with that person. So, and and then the difficulty is when it comes to sex, the truth of it is that sex really is better in a relationship, especially for women, but I think for men too. If you really know that person, and I'll just speak for myself as a woman. It's going to be a lot better if I'm in a relationship with someone. The relationship is going well. I trust that person. I feel connected to that person. Then the sex is going to be a lot better. I'm going to be a lot more turned on. So in order to have good sex, I need a relationship. And I also think that in order to have children, it is really better for children to have a relationship, to have somebody else to help you with the children. So in some case, for some things, it's really better, but that doesn't mean that it's any easier to attain. It's just one of these paradoxes in life. And then the longer you are with that person, it's easy to get bored sexually because it's always the same. And then people in the beginning of a relationship, they start out having these long sex sessions or having sex 5, 6, 7 times a day, spending all weekend in bed, and they're just so in love. And then that's a very temporary phase. That's the phase that many people want, but that phase passes after a year or two, sometimes sooner. And then you are in the everyday thing of life and you're busy working, and now sex becomes this thing you do late at night that you do very quickly. So you really have to think like, do I really want to really be with this person? And now we don't have to be. Um, it's kind of like the people who don't want to have children anymore. At one time, people had children because they had no options. There was no birth control. Until the 1950s, there really was no birth control. So people had children not because they wanted them, they just had them. When they had sex, they just got pregnant. Well, now people are choosing. And now it turns out that not everyone who had children, not all of our ancestors who had children wanted children. And so now we also find out that many people who coupled up, maybe they didn't want to couple up. They coupled up because they had to for survival. And also in the past, people were not concerned with their feelings, with, dealing with their baggage, personal development. So in a way, it seems like we have become more, as we're evolving, I don't know if we can call it evolving, beyond the need to be in a relationship. Like, we don't need it. We can learn. We get the opportunity now to be more self-sustained. But that doesn't answer how to have sex question. That is the one thing that is really difficult to get. Like, as a single person, you can provide your own food, your own shelter. You can pay people to do all the stuff if you have your own income, your own job. But the sexual aspects and you can get companionship from your friends, but to really get into deep personal development, if you want to do that, you do need a relationship or children or something that you love that challenges you. And to have sex, you need a relationship. That's where people are having most of the sex, unless you want to go around hooking up, and that has its own problems. So you really don't need a relationship. If you're willing to not have sex, you can get a sex doll, you can do pay to play, you can just be celibate. If you're willing to put the sex piece aside, which is like, I'm not really so willing to do, but I've just made peace with that fact that, okay, we don't need a relationship in the same way that we used to. So, okay, that's what I wanted to say. So whether we call it evolving or seeing who we really were all along, or we can also think of it in terms of like breaking down structures. I remember Eckhart Tolle in one of his videos or one of his talks talked about breaking down structures, that we get so attached to the permanence of things, and that part of our evolution is realizing the impermanence of things, and that involves breaking down structures. And there are structures that are breaking down, not just within the family or, marriage and people not wanting to have children, but also this idea of jobs for a lifetime. We can no longer count on that. But also our imperialistic power, the US, is actually in decline. The dollar is losing its value. Our military has been shown, all of our proxy wars are weakening us. I think that the decline of marriage could just be this institution that is now crumbling. For many people, we see it's crumbling. But what is to take its place? Are we supposed to be these individuals moving around? And then they tell us that humans are social creatures. But the people who say that, they're looking at history. Certainly, children need a lot of love, okay? That's a different category. Children need a lot of love. They definitely needed to grow up. But it's kind of like birds in the nest. Once you leave the nest and you've been filled with love from your parents, hopefully you had loving parents. If not, you can do your own self-love journey through inner child healing, parts work, and so on. Once we're adults, to what extent are we social creatures, really? We were social creatures in the past because we had these tribes that we needed for survival, for meaning. We didn't have phones and social media. If you took everyone's phones away, we would be out a lot more about with each other. We don't need each other in the same way that we used to. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, some people may think so. When they say we're social creatures, I think we have to look at how much time with other people someone may actually want. If you can only be with other people and you can never be alone, maybe that's not so healthy. But if you always want to be alone and you're shut in your home, you're afraid of people, you don't trust people, you don't like people, maybe that's not so healthy. I mean, I think people have a range. Some people just really love being around other people a lot. They're very social. They like planning events and parties and being around people. And other people prefer to be more alone, have more time alone in their solitude, in their own space. And instead of pathologizing either one, we can allow a range of who we are. And when people say, oh, pair bonding and humans are social creatures, they're almost pathologizing those of us who are very happy alone. I will tell you that being alone is very peaceful. It's extremely, extremely peaceful for me. And I can get a lot of my entertainment watching different YouTube videos, whether it's true crime, geopolitical analysis, how to do some kind of a workout, a cooking video, something about a social influencer. Like, there's so many great topics I like to watch on YouTube that I can spend hours every day just doing that, and I don't feel that need for people. When I feel a need for people, I just go out to the grocery store, I go to the gym, And I do have interactions with clients, so that's one way that I found that get that need met for myself. If I didn't have my clients, that would be a very different life for me. I no longer feel that need for a relationship. I've made peace with the fact that I'm not going to get everything that I want. And so that's just had me get really interested in this whole thing of what did I really expect out of a relationship, and can that really give me what I want? Because it can't. Because the things I would want, I'm not going to get from another person. That other person's not always going to be who I want them to be. Frankly, they're not going to be who I want them to be. I might have a fantasy of who they are, and that's one more thing I think about. One thing that's really helped me get over wanting a relationship is giving myself permission to have a fantasy partner. There's nothing wrong with having a fantasy partner. They try to, all these people try to gaslight us you should only do parts work if you have a therapist. I disagree with that. Don't scare me about myself. And, you shouldn't have fantasy friends. So sometimes I have this fantasy boyfriend who snuggles me at night. And it's great. I fall asleep right away. What's wrong with that? So you can have a fantasy partner. Just fantasize about having a partner. It can still give you all those really good feelings you had from a real person. I don't like it when people pathologize us too. And it reminds me too of when, they say in therapy that if you have a client who is threatening suicide, that you should, or talking about suicide or contemplating it, that you should, turn them into some authority. I think it's a natural thing for people to question, why am I here? People should be allowed to question that instead of having to exile that part and push it down and be afraid to even be afraid of themselves, be afraid of their own thoughts. I don't believe in that. I don't think people should be afraid of themselves. I think people should have the space to be like, oh, well, what is my purpose on this planet? Why am I really here? What if I wasn't really here? And to be able to face, death. We're not going to be here forever. And I think a lot of people are just so afraid of death that they want to try to go to all this effort to try to stay alive forever, stay young forever. And the richer people are, the more they come up with these techniques and supplements and whatever to live forever. Like, why? It sounds like so much effort, And related to this topic of people trying to scare us about ourselves. In that book, Parts Work, Richard Schwartz talks about how you shouldn't do parts work without a therapist. Like, do not look at your exiles, especially for people who have like very deeply hidden parts, people who had very traumatic childhoods. And maybe that's true, but I disagree with him. I've been doing my own parts work since reading the book and trying to do my own parts work and find my own exiles and what are my protectors as different scenarios come up. And I've done it on 3 different situations, and I feel like a big relief from these things that used to trigger me. They don't trigger me anymore. And I didn't like it when he said that. I'm like, do not scare me about myself and going inside myself. I'm not going to let anyone scare me about going into myself or figuring out who I really am, because you have all these outside voices saying, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what makes us good, what makes us bad. And all these people who say what's good and bad, they're not any kind of authority or expert. They're looking at human history of how we behaved, and they have their own theories. For example, a lot of the US politicians say Russia is bad and we're good. Well, Russia hasn't attacked anyone in decades. And neither has China. China prospers in peace. They're trying to they want everything to be peaceful. But the US is constantly attacking other countries, starting little things here and there to try to weaken Russia, weaken China, weaken... Oh, I think those are the only ones right now. We were in Iraq, we were in Afghanistan. Like, we're always trying to poke people. Like, why? And we're the good guys. They tell us we're the good guys. So people around us, they're lying to me. They're telling us we're the good guys and Russia is bad, China is bad, Iraq is bad, Afghanistan is bad, but we're good. Well, how would we feel if Russia was putting weapons on the border in Mexico or Canada? We wouldn't like it either. That's what we did in Ukraine. We were meddling around in Ukraine for 15 years. Okay, another example could be, I can't think of any other examples now. Oh yeah, when they were telling us that, I was watching a lot of the mainstream media when they were saying Russiagate, Trump was in Russia and Trump were colluding, blah, blah, blah. I watched this first. The whole time they were talking about Russiagate. Now we know it was Hillary Clinton who planted that story. They lied to us. What else are they lying about? That's just conscious lies. Then there are all the other unconscious lies where they don't know any better than you or I know. These experts who study evolutionary psychology or who study anything, they have theories. They weren't there a million years ago. And even if they were, times change, people change. They don't know anything about the course of evolution or the ideal state of humanity. They don't know any of that. They're not any experts. We allow these people to be experts, or I've allowed these people to be experts because they've gone to college and they've studied and they've written books. But they don't know. They don't know. And I just look around at our country, I'm like, the best and the brightest that we have in our country haven't solved any of these problems. We have rising crime. We have a lot of our major cities crumbling with homeless encampments. Oh, you can't have college students protesting on campus against genocide, but you can have homeless people on the streets of Los Angeles, Portland, San Diego, every major city, and you can monk around with the banking system, put people into subprime mortgages, steal trillions of dollars from the world by making these fake securities and blow it all up, and then you're just promoted to your next job. These are the best and our brightest who haven't figured out how to keep the U.S. gainfully employed, how to make sure we're thriving as a society, that everyone has health care. We're supposedly the richest country in the world, but there are children going to bed hungry. There are people who can't afford dental care and health care. Like, it's all just a bunch of charade, and these people are the experts. And these are the people that eat junk food and they're fat, and these are the experts that are supposed to know what's good for us. Some of the longing that people have is really a spiritual longing, but I think people also have that longing. Like, for me, I have a longing for nature, for peace, for light, I'm talking about light, like I need a lot of light. I have a longing for being left alone a lot. I have a longing for sexual connection, but the sexual connection I want would need a relationship. I don't have one. I don't know how to get one. So I've made peace with the fact that even if I did have this relationship, there would be other bad things. There's no one situation that satisfies everything. I'm going to go into why it's the duality of life. There's the duality of life. So everything has a good side and a bad side. You cannot escape it. You cannot have one thing and it's always going to make you happy, you know? And as soon as you get one thing, you'll be wanting for something else. It's the nature of life to want more and more and more. And we live in a world of duality. So everything that's good is going to have a downside. So you work out super hard, super hard, super hard. It's going to hurt. You're going to be sore the next day. But you have a relationship, you might fall in love, have really good sex, but this person is really bad with money. Now you have money problems. Or you might really want this job. You finally get this job, but then your boss really sucks, or the pay isn't that good, or the hours are not that good. Or you get this new car, you're excited about your new car, but now it has a lot of car payments, or it doesn't satisfy you in the way that it used to. So, and even if people did get this relationship that they want, which they imagine would make them so happy, it's not going to make you happy for very long. It's honestly going to cause a lot of pain. And like I said, the only reason that people are willing to endure that pain and the disappointment and the difficulties of that relationship is if they're very easygoing, they have a very strong attraction to that person, they have a very strong bond, either through children together or business together, because they're going to be disappointed a lot also. And if they have that great relationship, there'll be something else in their life that isn't working. It'll be either their health or their finances, or they won't like where they live because the weather's really bad, or the cost of housing is really bad, or one of their children has a disease. Like, there is no perfect life, is what it comes down to in the end. And what I really try to do is, my life is actually pretty good. For those of us whose life is pretty good, we get the chance to realize that any unhappiness that we feel is internally created, and that we cannot blame the outside world for it. And even if we have this thing that we think we want, it doesn't really make us happy. All you have to do is look at rich people. Look at P. Diddy. Look at any politician. Look at any celebrity. They have everything. They have money. They're good looking. They have money, power, status, health. But they blow everything up because they're deeply unhappy. You got to start doing all these drugs. They're so unhappy. They got to be alcoholics. They got to be drug addicts. They got to molest people. They got to take advantage of people. They're not happy. You know, Eckhart Tolle in one of his videos talked about how he has consulted with many rich people, and they will tell him, you know, I'm not happy. I got everything that I wanted, and I'm not happy. So do you want happiness? Because people say they want a relationship for the happiness, but the relationship isn't going to make you happy. That's what I want. That's what I should wrap the video up with as the main point. Okay, we want a relationship because we think it will give us something that we want, a chance at personal development, a chance at communion with another person, some companionship, someone to help us, you know, pay the bills or have dinner with or have great sex or be a status symbol or someone to have a family with or whatever. It's going to make us feel a certain way. If I get this relationship, I will feel a certain way, and you will. You will feel a certain way. It will give you some pleasure, especially having children. It's so wonderful, I have to say. Or if you have a pet, it will give you some pleasure, but it will also cause you pain. It will cause you discomfort. And you won't always be happy. And one day these children will leave you. And that's very hard. And one day your pets will die. And one day your spouse will die. So there's this duality of life. And so the only real happiness can really only come from the spiritual work, not spiritual bypassing, but learning how to not to avoid life, which sometimes I think I do by being like, I want people to just leave me alone, but by embracing what is and coming to terms with the things that upset me. Why do they upset me? That's also a spiritual opportunity. You know, like, why am I unhappy alone? Why do I want a relationship? Like, what is it that I'm really wanting? And just realizing that no matter what we get or what we have, it's not going to make us happy, permanently happy. That's why rich people are not any happier. They're not glowing with happiness. You know, they have all this money, they have all this fame, and sometimes the money and the fame actually makes their life cave apart because they can't handle it. And then they start going off on really bad tangents. So none of this stuff can really make us happy. So how do we gain happiness? Well, maybe some people don't. They just learn to accept or enjoy what is. That's the whole personal development journey, you know. But one thing I do believe is that every person has to learn to provide for themselves in this world. We all have to have a way to make a living, to be independent, and to find how to have, the search for meaning. I definitely think that even though people don't need each other in the way they used to, that we still have that need for having a search for meaning, for giving and receiving love, for having intellectual stimulation. And giving and receiving love actually that's the hard part, because the people that we love or the pets that we love, they can hurt us, they can disappoint us, and they can leave us. So, and like Eckhart Tolle says, life isn't here to make you happy or give you what you want. It's not the purpose of life. So that's a hard thing for us to come to terms with, because we're like, I want what I want. It's like the little toddler in us. I want what I want. But life isn't here to give us what we want. Life is here to give us what we need. So maybe I'll call this video Looking for Salvation in a Relationship, the folly. Because so many people are alone and they think a relationship would make them happy, but it really wouldn't. And for those people who are really alone, I would think that making friends is probably a good step. Is like, even like going, when you go to the grocery store, to like just say hi to the cashier. When you're at work, when you pass people on the street, just saying hi, and figuring out, if you can't do that, what's in the way of that, because there are ways to get connections with people that don't involve a relationship at all. You can have friends, you can have parties, you can have a Monopoly party, you can have a picnic at the park and invite people. Like, what is it that has you not invite people? You can go to meetup groups, you can join. When I go to the gym, I talk to people at the gym. Sometimes they start talking to me. Can I work in a set? Are you using this? The gym where I go, they have in the pool area, the sauna and the steam room is in the pool area. People in the sauna will talk to each other. The ladies will talk to each other. Sometimes the guys will join in. So there are ways to get community, especially for people who work from home more and more. I think it's super important to get out, like go to a comedy club and something like that, so you don't feel lonely and isolated. But the folly of looking for another person to give me anything, I don't believe that exists anymore. But maybe I've just become cynical. I'm going to be honest, okay, there is like this part of me that's like, if I could just meet some really cool guy in his late 30s who is into older women, that I could like go on runs with, or bike rides, or make dinner together, and if I trust him and like him, have sex with, that would be like so awesome. And of course I wouldn't marry him because he'd be way too young, but it could be like a really fun affair, and that way I wouldn't have to get annoyed with him because I wouldn't live with him, and it would just be like fun and enjoyable and yummy. Maybe something like that exists. So that's kind of my fantasy. And sometimes the fantasy can be as good as the real thing, but I don't even know if I could ever have something like that. Anyway, this was kind of one of my videos where some of my videos I've been making timestamps so that it's helpful for people if I'm trying to like give some information so people don't, know where to go. But this was kind of like more like a flow type of video. I did put a video in the members area yesterday. It's like, I want to know what people want me to talk about. Like if they have questions or they want to hear some of my stories. Some of my stories, after I got divorced, some of my stories were like so embarrassing that I couldn't even put them in the book. But it's been so long ago that I'm kind of like willing to share some of my stories, but I would just do that in the member area. I'm also following the Karen Reed trial, which is like about police corruption, and definitely they framed her. I cannot wait for the defense to start their part of the trial. If you want to follow that case, Karen Reed, R-E-A-D, in Canton, Massachusetts. Oh my God, these cops that framed her, they're gonna go down. Definitely a frame job. Anyway, I'm trying to get motivated to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. I might not go. Anyway, thanks for watching my video.